Now. Perfect. Thank you. Hey, everybody. It's great to be back at ETC. Let me start with a question. Can you raise your hand if, in case there was an option for you to take a mortgage that wouldn't touch a bank, would be completely in DeFi, where just you do the standard thing that you do using Aave, Morpho, whatever, and just like click a few buttons and get like financing for your home? Would you do it? Can you raise your hand if you prefer the DeFi option against like going to a bank? Well, it's like 50-50. So I guess like half of the people would still like prefer going to a bank for financing their home. So today I'm going to talk about the first ever DeFi mortgage, the option where you'd actually have to leave your house, your apartment, and you could like get your home finance completely using DeFi. But first, let me start with a quick story. My name is Josef. I've been in the space for quite a bit. I've been to every single ETC except for the last one, or the one last year. I've been involved with a couple projects, the Institute of Crypto Anarchy. I've been part of Ethereum Foundation for a while, and started a Bordel Hackerspace back in 2020. The majority of the story will actually be about Bordel. And I also started PawnDAO and Own. So I've been basically like entrenched in crypto my entire career. Like 10 years in, I live and breathe this space. The point is, I also, as many others, was looking for ways to buy an apartment. And I kind of was sad to realize that no bank would touch me because of my close affiliation with crypto. So I've tried multiple times, but I wasn't too lucky. And this talk is essentially about the outcome of the rejection. So let's look back, 2020, just got back from ETC in Paris, COVID started. And as many of the people in the community, it's just like if you can't travel, you'll just start messing out with random stuff. So back in summer 2020, not really out of necessity, but just like out of being bored with being stuck in one place, I rented a basement room in Paralelnipolis. Is anyone here aware of what Paralelnipolis is or was? It's one person. Rest of you never heard of Paralelnipolis? Interesting. So, but I'm sure like most of you have heard of the merge, right? Is there anyone who doesn't know what the Ethereum merge stands for? Everybody knows what the merge was. So like during those times of the merge, you might have seen this picture is actually from a Bankless tweet. The first one shows you NASA headquarters, and the second one shows you Bordel. This is the hackerspace where the merge got tested successfully for the first time. So you see like a bunch of people from the Get team. And this is it. That's the hackerspace. It's one room. Like couple of square meters, but funny things were happening there. In the back, there is Mario Havel, the guy behind the Bordel.wtf, the merge tracker. 1 year in, 2021 at ListConf, I actually gave the first talk about mortgages for crypto natives, and that's kind of how the whole story started. So I've been in crypto for several years. I went to a bank, tried to get a mortgage. I applied for one, was making decent money, but I was rejected because my income was paid in crypto. I was paying taxes on it, but the bank didn't care, right? I was like too risky of a client. They looked at my Etherscan reports and just like laughed into my face. Like that's nothing. Like you don't have anything. So I got rejected. I started faking having a fiat income for almost 2 years. I eventually like even switched my contract so I wouldn't be paid in ETH to being paid in fiat. And slowly I built up a credit score to get to a point where the bank, the online banking would tell me like, hey, you can borrow up to like 600-700K. We're fine with this based on your credit rank. So I went back to the bank, I applied. There was a last KYC form which literally asked me something like, do you own, trade, or are anyhow exposed to cryptocurrencies? And to that I just like gave them my Ethereum Foundation contract. So that was the end of the story for me getting a mortgage. So I thought like, okay, what are my options? Well, I can get a standard mortgage. I can get a DeFi loan, so I could use Aave or MakerDAO at the time. But it's too risky, right? Because that can get you liquidated like anytime during like a 50% crash. And within the setup, I essentially started working on PawnDAO and like Pawn, and that was the substrate of the technologies needed for actually having something like a DeFi mortgage to happen on chain, because it simply didn't exist. So with that, there's one more thing that happened. It was 2023. We hosted our second ETH Prague, and there was a community clash. So we had to leave. Bordel was no longer welcomed in Paralympipolis. So we essentially like packed my 2 boxes and took a neon sign from the door and left. And then the Bordel Hackerspace was homeless. The other person, their co-founder Mario Havel, he wanted to open one in Barcelona. I was like looking for places for quite some time. We were thinking about how to finance this. And in the meantime, we were building PawnDAO and the entire peer-to-peer lending infrastructure. That happened for essentially like few years when we just were sitting and talking about it. And meanwhile, time was passing. Nothing really happened. There was not even like people who were part of Bordel before. They kind of like gone to different hackerspaces. But eventually, last year, 2025, kind of like hitting the crypto lows. We didn't know it may go below that, but we started talking about reopening the hackerspace again, because like all of the hackerspaces in Prague, they all hate crypto. Like if you're in crypto for sufficiently long and like you're also part of like any other open source community, then I guess it's kind of a public knowledge that the standard open source communities, they don't like crypto. It's all scams and like rug pulls, and they don't want to be affiliated with it. So there isn't actually any like friendly hackerspace in Prague where the community could like meet and just talk about the stuff that we like. So we started talking about opening one, and then exactly 1 year ago, it was actually April 1st, we launched the first interface for DeFi mortgage. It was a joke. It was a AI agent trying to raise money to buy his own server so he could leave AWS. We made a few people laugh. We also made the interface, but we didn't have the contracts. Throughout summer, we were prototyping it, and then finally, we decided to launch it at DEF Connect in Buenos Aires last year. So the goal was create a proper DeFi mortgage. Like what should be true about such a contract? So it has to be fixed rate. The rate has to be guaranteed for long enough. So it has to be essentially at least 5 years long, and we have to build it on chain that we can trust to be existing in 5 years. It's like, I mean, it's hard to, it's hard to assume any other chain that maybe Bitcoin and Ethereum will be live in 5 years. So the choice was obvious here. Then it has to limit the risk. Like you don't want to take a mortgage and put your life savings on the table and risk that you will get wrecked in 1 day, 50% dump that recovers the next day. So the traditional like price-based liquidation wasn't an option. Also, with price-based liquidations, the thing that you need is an oracle, and you have to make you have to be able to say that the particular oracle that you pick will be also functioning in 5 years. That's another thing that's kind of hard to assess unless you run the entire oracle infrastructure yourself. At which point, like you're just introducing more and more components. There also has to be no human factor. So you could like skip the price oracle if you could like have a trusted setup of people being able to say like this should or shouldn't be liquidated. And the third component also has to be open. It has to be tapped into the rest of DeFi. It has to be permissionless, no KYC. So the goal for the hackerspace in Prague was let's try to raise $250,000, 250K for 5 years at a very low rate, at 2.5%. I'm going to explain why the rate was so low. We actually started at 2 and then we bumped it to 2.5. This was November last year. The standard AVE rate was something like 3.11, 3.2 on USDC. So it was slightly lower. But for a certain group of people who are like interested in just making these funny things happen, it was sufficient. So how this entire structure looked like. So the first step was crowdsourcing the money, crowdsourcing the mortgage. So first, we deployed a 4626 vault, and the lenders, the contributors, could contribute USDC to the vault. The vault would, by proxy, deploy the money into Aave, securing the baseline yield for the time of the crowd loan being running, which was 90 days. Then, once a minimum threshold is matched, the borrower, in this case, was a multisig, it was a safe wallet of about 6 people, could pooling the collateral together. The collateral in this case was rep EtherFi ETH, so yield-bearing asset at LTV of 75%. Then once the loan is executed, the money would be drawn from Aave, it would go to the multisig, so the real estate, the actual hackerspace could be bought, at which point there's the second factor. The lenders would not only get the rate, would not only get the interest, which wasn't really interesting, but it would get perks. So it get like membership, they would get free server hosting in a hackerspace, they could host their own events. It was actually the non-monetary perks were more interesting than the yield itself. Like, I guess nobody really here is interested in like getting 2.5% on your dollars because like you can get a lot more elsewhere. And we also didn't want to trigger any like regulatory concerns because like, well, obviously you were making less than the standard rate. So this was more of a community fundraiser really than like a standard financial product. So once the loan is created, then the repayments are triggered. So the borrowers are required to keep sending regular installments, in this case monthly installments, back into the pool from which the lenders can draw their the installments, the repayments plus yield. And this would be lasting for 5 years. So this is basically the structure. There is no like direct connection to the real estate itself. The real estate comes after and there is the entire structure around it. So it's still an over-collateralized loan on-chain, which is a slightly different mechanics than what you're used to on Aave or Maker, etc. So how it went. So on the day one, when we announced the project, we had an instant commitment of about 80K. There were like perks kind of scheduled based on the money contributed. So you were getting like extra perks like tickets to ETH Prague and like a VIP membership lasting like indefinitely and so on. And the first day was awesome. We just announced it, like people in the room were actually like taking out their phones and contributing. And then 2 months have passed and nothing happened. So we were like at 85K out of the 250. Like people were kind of losing hope. Nothing was really happening. Then 10 days later, we actually found the proper spot. And that's kind of, that got people excited again. So we found a nice location that we could buy with actually way less. It costs around like 150K. And we started talking about it more publicly again. It was like a few days before the loan would actually expire. 1 day before, or actually 12 hours before the expiration of the entire loan, we raised it from like a bunch of people from the ecosystem who were actually interested in just making it happen. But until the very, very last moment, it was kind of a chase to see if we're going to make it or not. Anyways, we found it. We found a proper spot, and we raised enough money to be able to execute a loan. We found a bunker. So we're actually buying a bunker to open up a hackerspace called Bordel in Prague. It has everything you can dream of. There are no windows, so like only Linux users are allowed. There is a proper like trezor door. There is a decontamination shower right at the entrance. There is the entire ventilation system like built in, I don't know, like the 60s. It still runs, it still functions, and there is a secret hatch as a backup entrance just in case the main entrance would be blocked. It's 70 meters. It's awesome. We're definitely moving in there. And yeah, if you come to ETH Prague, be happy to show you around at the opening party. There were also a few more surprises. So because like crypto is crypto, the very last person who wanted to support the Bordel hackerspace actually made a mistake, and instead of using the deposit function and using the interface, they decided to go the harder path and actually execute the contracts directly. But instead of using the function, they just made a simple transfer into the vault. So they effectively donated $10,000 to the lenders. So for the lenders, the rate that they're getting back isn't actually 2.5%, but close to 5%, which like at the point where the Aave variable rate was like 2.1, starts actually making a lot of sense. So this is like closer to what you could expect from a mortgage type of loan. So now we have 5 years to return the 190 something K. the Bordel case, I'm sure will happen as promised. There's more paperwork to be done. Right now, what happens on the legal side is that we are setting up a legal entity. All of the people who contributed collateral, the crypto collateral for the loan to be executed, get a fair share in that legal entity. So if someone committed like 50% of the entire collateral, they would get 50% of the shares. Plus, there is an extra clause. So nobody of the donors, they want to lose their crypto, right? They basically have their own assets at stake to make sure the repayments happen. But in case any of them would have to or would be willing to start repaying the loan on behalf of all of the others, they'll just get more shares, more company shares minted. So the legal entity buys the hackerspace and the shares are kind of mapped on the contributions made, regardless of like whether that's the collateral or the repayments made. The repayment, by the way, is something like $3,000 monthly. It's maybe slightly more than the rent that would be paid for such a space in Prague. At the same time, we only have like 5 years to pay this, and afterwards it's just ours, and we don't have to worry about making any repayments or paying the rent. So that's about it. The plans that we have with this is basically fund more community spaces. So even though this could be used for your own like private mortgage, it would have to be like fundraised, or we would have to find a particular lender for this. We want to work with communities. We want to work with network state communities and like community housings, and just make them use this tool. It's all open source. The entire contract, the entire interface is all open source, so you can just like fork it and use it yourself. At the same time, if you reach out to us, we're happy to set this up with you. We don't charge any fee. The point is we want to make at least like 10 of these deals to happen worldwide before we even start thinking about monetizing this. And yeah, just get the QR code. There's my Telegram. You can reach out to me. You can also find out more about the loan at loan.bordel.wtf. You can also find out more about OwnLabs, which is the team behind the mortgage. And yeah, if you have any questions, I think we might have 2 more minutes for them, if I'm not wrong. Thank you. There's a question.
So for a one-off mortgage, it's relatively straightforward because people seem to know you, they know the work. But how would you go about quantifying the risk profile of a random mortgage on a random open network?
You mean like this type of a mortgage where crypto sits as collateral? The profile of the lender would be someone who is willing to take a bet for possibly buying the collateral asset at a discount compared to current price by the time the loan concludes. So the point here is the entire collateral is always at risk if you start missing repayments. So even if the first repayment is missed, then the borrowers lose their entire collateral. If the last repayment is missed, they still lose the entire collateral. So the worst case scenario is like if the collateral price keeps dropping faster than the loan is being repaid over time. And because we cannot make any assessment about like the price of the collateral in like 5 years or like 10 years, we require the entire thing to be staked like for the entire duration, not being like withdrawn as you repay, at least currently. So yeah, like a person, like in our case, definitely people who were like long on ETH that like wouldn't mind buying ETH at a 25% discount compared to today's price.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
And I think that was it. So thanks a lot again. And again, if you're interested in getting your mortgage, check this out.